The Powers Project.
Hi, Lona. How are you doing today?
Great, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And actually, I should call you Dr. Lona for short, for Dr. Lona Cook. I think anyone who goes through school to become a doctor deserves the respect to be called a doctor. So,
Well, thank you. Hardly anyone calls me Dr. Lona, though. Even my patients call me Lona. So,
really, okay. All right.
mhm.
Well, I don't know. I'll probably stick to Dr. Lona. We'll see.
All right, that's fine.
On top of being a doctor of chiropractic care, you are also a mother, which is, I'm sure most women would say is a full time job in itself.
Sure.
And we think that's easier than what it really is. But I've been on both sides of it, so I know there's much more to it than what men think usually. Um, and you're also the author of a book that you wrote called Reclamation, The Evolution of a Hot Mess. And I love the title. And so I was like, I've got to ask her, what inspired her to write this book? And
Yeah.
as I was reading the book, the first thing off the bat is, you tell about the story about living in Costa Rica and you're robbed at gunpoint. And I'm like, what? like, what is your thought when someone sticks a gun into your side and you're like, do you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die? Oh my gosh, this is real. This is not real. This is like, did you have courage? Like, get away from me. I mean, so instead of getting on a tangent here, I'll let you tell the story about the book, what inspired you, and kind of tell that story.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I also agree that motherhood is a full-time job. So, in a great job, but challenging, certainly. Okay, so I decided to write the book during the beginning parts of COVID. Really, what happened for me is I had this brewing in my mind that I was going to write this book, kind of telling my own evolution to what woke me up, I will say, into the way that I look at life now. And I haven't always lived like this. And so I wanted to use my own school of hard knocks to, shed some light on things that really helped me. So I had that in the back of my mind that I wanted to write this book that was kind of my own personal story. And then when COVID happened and things shut down, I found myself like trying to figure out how I was going to keep all my staff working. And so I ended up taking less time in the clinic at the time, and I had a little more time at home, and I was pregnant. So I wrote the book during that time. So it was one of those things where I didn't know when I was going to write it, but I had it brewing in me that I wanted to put this together and let people read my story. And then I thought it was a great place to start the book was at the holdup when I was in Costa Rica. So I was there for about a month. And it was, one of those things that happened so fast that at the time I really didn't register what was happening. So I wouldn't have said, like, in hindsight, I did not have a lot of fear. And that might have been the whole reason why it happened, because I probably shouldn't have been where I was walking by myself. But it happened again so quickly that by the time it was over, I realized what had happened. I was like, okay, now do I walk back home or do I walk to where I was going? Because I didn't know what to do next. And a reason I start the book there is because I do believe there is an energetic connection between what we're experiencing in our external world and what we feel on the inside. And again, hindsight being 2020, I was in some chaos in my life and had been for a while. And so, again, a very literal pause from the universe to like reflect on maybe making some internal changes came to me from my external world as a gun to the chest. And again, at the time, I didn't see it that way. But now I really try and pay attention to what is happening in my outer world and what is that trying to show me about my inner world, and see the connection there. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is I think a lot of people don't maybe know to look at your external world that way.
Right. And I want to touch more on that in just 1 second. But before I do that, I want to talk about this armed robbery, because you put it at the beginning of the book. And so my sense was this was the catalyst to get you to look at your internal world because of what was going on in the external world. So this bit was basically the beginning of you changing your life and living it differently. And so I think that's what I got from it, is that's why you put that story there, because like this was the beginning. Would that be correct?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah. It was the start of a lot of things shifting for me.
and I think you're absolutely correct. I think that people, I've said this many times to people. I go, if you want to see what's going on the inside of somebody, just look at the outside of them. I go, whatever's going on in their life on the outside, I promise you is going on the inside.
Mm,
But I don't think people, like you said, I don't think they realize that themselves. I don't think they realize, hey, why is this stuff going on, and why, why do all these things happen to me? And they don't go, hey, maybe I should look inside and see what's going on in here. Would you say that?
totally. Yeah. And it's like, it's an ancient practice. It's Feng Shui, essentially, like Feng Shui, like as you move the external world of your house around, it changes like your experience in the world. I think Feng Shui is fascinating, but again, if you're not into that, you may have never realized that like there is an inner and outer connection happening. And it becomes, I think, very helpful and applicable as you learn some of these tricks where you're like, I don't like what I'm experiencing. Guess what? You have a way to change it. You can work on that inside, which is a great place to start. But even if you're not ready to do that, you can start to see it in your outer world and become aware of, this repeating pattern that's happening that I don't like, or, that there actually is power for you to change your own life. Mm-hmm.
I agree. For me, one of the things that woke me up was, whenever I would drive, it seems like everyone around me was a butthead. Everybody. It's like I go, where do you people learn how to drive, and how did you get a license? And I had to look back, and I had to go, did I create some of this because of the way I was driving? Because I
Mm,
think I'm a great driver. And so, it couldn't possibly be me, so,
right.
and so when I took an honest look, and was introspective, I was thinking, I'm probably creating a lot of this around me. And when I started driving differently, lo and
Mhm.
behold, everybody else started driving differently. Or at least that was my perception.
Mm,
And so that whole thing about, how, what your perception is what your reality is, and what you're saying, that's, I agree with you 100% on that.
mm. Same. It's like, if you go look at a new, blue car and all of a sudden now all you see is blue cars, right? Your perception is everything.
I'm going to tell
Mhm.
you, let me tell you this real quick. I don't want to talk about me a lot. I want to talk about you. But I did an experiment where I said, I didn't believe there were, I wanted to see if this really worked. And I said, I don't believe there are a lot of purple cars in Orlando. And I truly believe that. That's why I picked purple, because I go, I never see purple cars.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to give it 2 days. I wanted to go, for 2 days, I'm going to see how many purple cars I see. And the first day I saw like 10 or 12, which was 10 or 12 more than I thought it was going to see.
Yeah.
The next day I saw over double that. Now, the experiment was done. However, the day following that, all I saw were purple cars everywhere. It's like they were having sex at night, and they were just
That's awesome.
in Orlando with purple cars. And I was like, holy, but to your point, exactly. It's like you
Right.
don't notice things, but that doesn't mean they're not there. It's just
Hmm.
your reality doesn't see it. And with you getting held up at gunpoint, you probably didn't realize, hey, maybe I shouldn't be out here walking around by myself.
Hmm.
And
Yeah. Maybe there's some other things that I'm putting myself in bad positions.
right.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so, what would you tell people who find themselves, with their external world almost turned upside down, where it seems like all this stuff happens to them? What would you tell?
Hmm. Yeah. I think when you're ready, because no one can do it for you, that it's a beautiful time to just pause for a second. And that literally just can be like, instead of doing what you'd always do next, just give yourself permission to just take a moment and think about what we were just talking about, Kurt. Like, what is my role in this? Or what's the payoff to this? Which, takes courage to look at yourself in those regards, because sometimes you see things you don't love about yourself. But the cool thing is you also can be whoever you want to be. And I think that's the key thing, is we get in these ruts. And I think the longer we're an adult and you see a certain pattern, probably the longer that's been a rut for you, where you always have a knee jerk similar reaction or way that you be in the world. So for myself, like as I was waking up, I realized I don't have to just jump to the next thing just because I always would in the past always jump to the next thing. I was always a person who was just like lightning speed on making decisions and like kind of leave a train wreck behind me. And so for me, the gunpoint and what came after that was kind of the first time I let myself back down from a few things and just give myself permission to look at, maybe I don't have to always be like the bull in the china shop fighting my way out of the corner. I could do something different. And my life reflected the fact that I had changed my energy a little bit. Just like you said, when you stopped thinking everyone else was the bad driver, whether that meant your driving changed or the way you were looking at them changed, your life changed then.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so now I have a question for you. I want to talk about, because you said we are the walking law of attraction, and
Mhm.
I love that saying because it's absolutely true. But before I want to get into that, I want to ask you something, because after Costa Rica, you went back to Wisconsin, right?
Mhm.
You were
Yep.
supposed to go out to California, and then things happened where there were signs to say, "Hey, this isn't for you." And I
Right.
found it interesting because I go, all right, how did you know at that point? Because a lot of times people have trouble. They go, how do I know that that's just, the universe trying to get me to quit and I really need to double
Mhm.
down on this and really go out there? Or how do they know that, oh, this is a sign to say I shouldn't be out in California? So how do you tell the difference?
Yeah, I love that question, Kurt, because I think that's something that only you can answer. Like I can only answer that for myself, and you can only answer that for yourself. But for me, my experience is so at that time, it was like I wasn't willing to see that I wasn't going to go out to California. So I kept going like I was going to do it. And I had come back from Costa Rica and I was working in a doctor's office, and it was like left and right things were going wrong with my situation of renting this apartment out in California. I won't go into all the details, but it was like various phone calls coming that like I had signed myself up for a scenario that was not going to work out there. So I was scrambling to figuring out living, still thinking I was going out there. And finally, on the last day of my clinic rotation in the doctor's office, the doctor I worked for at the time, she turned around and she said, "If you're looking for a sign, I'm your sign. You're not supposed to go." And I just thought, like, now again, thinking back, I'm like, that's wild. It was so blunt. I hadn't even really told her that I was like hemming and hawing over this. It was like she just kind of whammied me with like, "Do you not get it? Like everything is going wrong." And so that's where I found myself driving back to my parents' place because my mom was going to drive out with me the next day. And I just felt like so defeated. And so I just went to bed because I didn't know what else to do. And I woke up in the morning. And for me, I know that on a clear night, like of sleep, as well as first thing in the morning, that's usually when I'm going to make the best decision if it's something that I'm worried about. And so I woke up and realized, like, yeah, I'm not supposed to go. So back to your question about like, how do you know it's not just fear that is keeping you kind of stuck? And, that's where I try and ask myself now as I realize more and more of this, that I'm creating my reality, that, when you're supposed to do something, I feel like you're going to get nudges to do it. And the fear you feel is usually something where I think you can kind of decipher, like, I'll ask myself, like, what is the worst thing that happens if I don't do this? And it kind of feels like a letdown. Like I'll have let myself down if I don't do this. I'm scared to do it, but I'll have let myself down if I don't do it. Versus like, and things start to like move, the momentum starting to move you in that direction. Versus in the other, the momentum was not moving me in that direction. It was moving me to make a different decision. And I was like getting beat up by the flow of life at that point because I was not unwilling to see it. So I hope that answers, but
That answers it very well. And thank you for the explanation, because there are people out there like the Pareto effect. That was it. I couldn't think of it earlier when I was talking to someone else. The Pareto effect, where the 80-20 theory, that the 80% of the people are one way or the other, and 20% the other way. And 80% of the people, my belief is that they are followers, and they have to, like, if you didn't give them that explanation, they don't trust themselves enough to
mm-hmm.
come up with the answer for themselves, and so they're always looking for someone to lead them and to guide them. And it's unfortunate because at some point you need to be able to do this on your own. It's great to have people who can lead you and guide you to a certain point, but then you realize I can only go as far as that person's willing to take me, or as far as they've gone, and so you can't go any further until you decide to get on, do it on your own 2 feet. So that explanation, I think, will help people a great deal. You know, there's a lot of
Kurt, don't you think that's some of what we're experiencing in the world right now? I mean,
oh
I feel like we're in this grand awakening of people realizing I got to do this for myself. I got to use my own truth right now.
I do, and I do now. That you mentioned, I do think, and not only do I think that people are starting to wake up to it. I unfortunately, you know how when you're a kid and you get a little bit of knowledge and you think you know everything. Well,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, when people first start awakening to new realities, they think they've already got it all. And it's like, no, you don't have it all. I, you know,
Right. None of us have it all.
none
Yeah.
of us have it all. And so to think that is silly but they think
Mhm.
they've got it all down and they got it, and that they have the answers to everything. And and I go, you guys, we all have such a long way to go to get this. And then of course you have the other people who think everything that you and I are talking about is woo woo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is physical for them. If they
Right.
can't, acknowledge it in the physical, they don't acknowledge it at all. And
Right.
those are another group of people that are kind of challenging to get through.
That's the part that I think is shifting. I mean, I feel like there's a scale tipping where more and more people are engaging in a conversation like we are more than just our physical body. This desk is more than just like like there's more reality than just the stuff I can put my hands on, you know.
And I want to talk about that as well. I want to talk about vibrations because I know that there's some of these people are waking up and hearing this for the first time, and so I'd like for you to maybe explain a little bit more that where they can have an understanding of it. But I'll tell you something that manifests to me is that lately, and I'm and I was thinking about this today, is that all my guests have been such positive people, and we
Mhm.
all think alike. Now, I am not the kind of person who does a podcast where I only have people on who think like I do. I have
Yeah.
people on who think quite differently than I do, and I want that because I want people to see the different perspectives out there and come up with their own answers. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, it's what do you call it, God, the universe, or some power or whatever. It's like I know that I have you on as a guest, that you and I connected for a reason. Like this
Right.
energy is bringing us together. And I know people are going, oh, that's some woo woo stuff right there. But I truly believe it, and I know that it works. And then I was thinking today, I go, I need to quit putting that out there, because I need some not negative people, but people otherwise it's gonna look like I only have people on my show who like me, and I like them, and we agree with each other. So
Mm-hmm. No, I hear that. Well, and I think that sums up so much of, again, everything we're just hitting on with law of attraction. Like you can't not put your vibe out into the universe. It is the nature of like your energy system, which we all have an energy system, whether we recognize it or not. I just think that those of us that maybe are more aware of that, you can see it so clearly. Like I had a bad day a couple weeks ago, and I don't usually have bad days. And it's like it's such a contrast when that happens now, that it's like, whoa, I cannot let this keep going, because you can just see how it like, I was saying on a friend or a different podcast, I don't remember, I was telling the story in the last week, but basically I was in this bad mood because my day got messed up. And it was like, clearly that I hadn't been taking good care of myself, for one thing, to just kind of be the like straw that broke the camel's back. But I was in a mood, and I have a baby, he's 12 months. And so I'm giving him a bath, and half the time I usually take a bath with him. So I'm in the bath with him, and he poops in the bathtub. And it was like, oh my gosh, this was like one thing after another this morning. And now I'm sitting in a bathtub with poop. Like this is my bad day. And it's almost comical right now, because it's still funny until it's not funny, right? Like when you have that negative cycle of energy happening long enough, all of a sudden there's things that are like gunpoint, like that's not funny anymore, So yeah, when I think about vibration, sometimes for me, I had to sit and listen to a lot of this metaphysical and quantum science, and also I'm a chiropractor. And so a lot of our beginnings began with trying to understand not only the physical body, but we call it different things, but kind of saying the soul and the spirit and how that influences the physical body. And I'd sit and listen to people. And sometimes I'm like, gosh, that's dogmatic. It doesn't fit for me. And so then I'd have to dive down different texts or different other people that I could, hear their take on things so that I could form my own thought process around this. And some of the ways that help me understand it is to think about, okay, we've studied that like a solid has particles that are held together and it's in a structure that's more, I don't know what the word is. It's more structured. It's tighter. And then for instance, if we're talking about ice, right? Those particles are slower and they're together and it looks like a solid. And then you add energy to it. And now we've got water and those particles are moving faster and having more interactions. And then you add even more energy to it. And now you can't see it anymore, but it's still there. It's water vapor or cloud. And they're really fast particles, higher amounts of energy there. And so that's how I started to think about our bodies too. Like our physical body is the most dense part of us, but just like an old style radio, if that was out of tune and there was an antenna there and we went and stood our body close to it, but not touch it, it influences that antenna. You'd hear the broadcast differently. So we're bigger than our bodies, that's not really up for discussion anymore. And yet we somehow just think, when I talk about my body, I'm only talking about the physical dense part of it. It's like, no, that's so old. It's so old school. We are more than that.
You're right. And when I started doing personal training decades ago, I couldn't convince people to save my life that they would, many of my clients would come to me because they wanted to get in better shape, because they felt like if I get in better shape, I'll be more attractive. People will like me, that the whole, I'll like myself better. And there's truth to that. But that's just one part of the truth. And the other part is that if you don't change the inside with the outside, then you're not going to be nearly as successful as you think you are. And so I do hypnotherapy, and so what I would do is teach people how to make this a way of life, rather than just, I need to lose 30 pounds because I have a wedding coming up in 6 months.
Yes.
It's like, and then because after the wedding's over, you're going to be 40 pounds heavier now, so.
Yeah, no, I love that.
And so you're so right about that. It's just, it's getting people to understand that it's not just the physical. That's only one part. And there's more parts to it. Like you said, even emotional and spiritually, which, I think I don't like talking a lot about spiritual, only because people have their different ideas of what spirituality is. And a lot of it goes to religion and stuff. And so I don't like to, get people all up in arms about that. But there is a spiritual side of us that needs to be addressed. However you address it, it needs to be addressed, and you can't just ignore it.
I'm with you. Yes. So, yeah. And I think we've siloed all these things, and here we are now, right? Like It's staring us in the face that they are not compartmentalized. It is whole. We are whole, and we're going to have to look at all aspects of us if we're really trying to be in our potential or in our, our biggest, purpose here in this physical plane. Is my take on it, is like, we can't keep these things in their own compartments anymore.
Right, exactly. You have to be able to touch on all of these, because you can tell people who are out of balance. You can tell someone who focuses completely on the physical body. They might look great on the outside, but the rest of them is, as you said in your the title of your book, a hot mess. And so,
right. And we all are hot messes in various areas, right, but we're working on it, right? Like that's the goal.
And that's the thing. Yes, we'll always be working on it, to always, and you want to. You know what a world would be like if you had hit the pinnacle, like you don't need to progress anymore. It would be so boring. I would feel trapped. I think everybody would feel trapped if we were in that kind of world. So I like the fact that it takes a lifetime to progress and continue progressing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was sitting out on our dock today, and, with all the chaos in our world right now, one of the things that I used to sit and write out, like kind of my goals for, my business and various things in my life. And so I just sat there for 20 minutes and kind of envisioned like some of these bigger entities of things that we're seeing chaos circling around: healthcare, religion, politics, etc. I was just trying to think about like, what would those topics look like in a world if I could create whatever I thought would be like a good way for the world to go, and the reason I do that, and I like to try and put some thought structure around those things, is like, who would have thought we'd been here 18 months ago? Like, things are changing fast in our world right now, for the good or for the better. You make up your mind, but to put thought out there about what we'd want, again, based on everything we're talking about here, Kurt, I do think it matters. I think it matters for us to have like a vision of what we'd want to see. Like you said, like evolution, we're going to keep evolving. It would be boring if we had it right, and had it all down. I don't think we'd exist then, personally. But so it's like, well, we're going through change. I think we all know we're going through some sort of monumental change in our world right now. What could be really awesome on the other side of this if we got to create it, so we might as well put some thoughts into that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people understand they have the power to create it. It's not someone else who's going to create it for you.
Right.
And I think, well, what's your opinion? Because my opinion is that, again, I'm very hard on people in this country because we have so much. And we're the biggest whiners and the biggest complainers and the biggest victims. And I don't, how are we any of these things with all the things that we have? How are we, our first world problems don't compare to those who live in third world conditions. And yet we'll think that the world's going to end because my phone died and it won't start up. It's like, that's nothing compared to what other people have to go throughout this world. So what do you think? I mean, how do we change? And again, I know you said it's changing and I agree, but do you think there's anything other than what we're doing now, like talking about it to reach, to do our best to reach the masses? Is there anything else that's going to happen? Or do you think it's just a natural progression that people are starting to wake up and that's just, the universe making it happen?
Well, I think it is a natural progression, but I do think we have free will choice in all of this, so I think having new experiences makes this change, and entertaining new thoughts. And if you're not willing to change, then I think, just like we were talking about at the beginning of this, like, you can beat your head against the brick wall. It's your choice, or you can move with change. And all of our versions of that are going to look different because we're all having different experiences, which I think is part of how the whole collective of us evolve. But yeah, sometimes when we're squeezed, I've said this many times during this whole 18 months that we've had of chaos, is that, when you do believe there's something bigger working through you, like I do believe we're mind, body, spirit, or physical, mental, emotional, that there's some sort of divine order in all of this. So that has helped me the most in some ways to know that, like, okay, I trust that my body, you look at these like perfections of cells that come together and create a baby, right? Like you didn't have to think about that to have that happen. Or you grab a leaf and you see all the spider webs of all the conduits of where the water goes in the leaf. It's like, there is some sort of amazing order in all of this. So how, we can see that in these instances, but then when something bad and chaotic happens, we're like, oh no, this is all wrong. Right. And it's like, I don't believe that. I believe that just like contractions in birth, it doesn't feel good. You don't want to do more of them generally. It's like, get me out of here. I don't want to do this again. And then the wave passes and you're okay. And you breathe for a minute and you're like, okay, I don't know if I can do another one, but I don't think I have a choice. I'm going through this. I think we are collectively birthing something pretty crazy right now, but I would guess on the other side of the contraction is something far better. So for me, I choose to believe that right now, that we are all going to be changed. You can go kicking or screaming, or try and look at, okay, something better could be in store that we didn't even know about. For me, I'm in healthcare. So we talk chiropractors, we're, in the past, we're the quacks. And so we've always been a little weird compared to some of the mainstream medicine. And so, my friends and I will talk about, like, there's a lot of things about our healthcare in our country that I 100% disagree with. And so some of that, I feel like we've been calling out for change for a long time on some of these fronts. And what did we think it was going to feel like to have some of this actually change? You know, it probably wasn't going to be a pleasant experience that got us there. So we hold on to that. And I think that for me feels like a positive outlook on this. And when, you know, there does feel like there's a lot of uncertainty right now, I'm also hopeful. I've never seen people like kind of rally together on some of these things like this. So I am hopeful. I just think it's going to be an interesting time for a while.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you make a great point that people, you know, oftentimes we say we want change, but we don't think change would change that there's going to be any suffering or any pain, and usually with change there always is, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
we seem shocked every time the pain comes around, and we don't want to deal with the pain. We just want to change without the pain, and it's like it doesn't work that way usually, you know.
Yep.
And and you know, to your point, you know, without that pain, without that suffering, we don't understand what joy and pleasure is. Everything that those things that we don't like are
Mm-hmm.
there for a reason. They serve a purpose, and yet we'll do everything to avoid them. And I don't. And I had a guest on yesterday. She made a great statement. She said, "You should want to get so far away from your comfort zone that you forget how to get back there." And
Mm.
I love that because nothing good, you don't progress in your comfort zone. You know, I don't want to say nothing good happens. I'm just going to say you don't move forward when you're in your comfort zone. That's why it's a comfort zone. You're happy there, and you're like, oh, I'm here, I'm good, I'll stay here, thanks a lot. And then, you know, we limit ourselves when we do that. So
Yeah, I agree. And I do feel strongly that all of us are going to have to anchor into what is my truth, not as what everyone else that's around me telling me, what is my truth. And then use that as your, like, you know, backbone moving forward here. And I feel like that's part of what this contraction is about, is we can't be fat and happy anymore. We got to like start to move in a way where, you know, we create change in our world that needs to happen.
I will say this, and for people who listen or watch my show, you know, if they that you know, watch or listen to every episode or close to every episode, they'll hear me repeat this over and over again. One of the things about our truth is that I always find there's a danger, because I believe that too. I believe we all have our own truth, but
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons why I have my shows, because I want people to look at things, everything that you can think of. I want you to look at it from every possible
Mm,
perspective that you can find, because when you're able to do that, like I can look at it from my perspective and I have my truth, but I have this little sliver of truth. But in the big scheme of things, I don't have the whole truth. And the
mhm.
only way I can get the whole truth is by looking at it from different optics. And so I caution people to go, listen, I know you have your truth, but you need to expand on your truth by looking at it from different perspectives, and you'll find that you might have some truth there, but there's a lot more truth out there that you're unaware of.
Mm. Yes. Oh, so true.
With you, I heard you say this. I was watching you on someone else's podcast, and you said about, we are the walking law of attraction, and basically you said whether you agree with it, whether you believe in it or not, it's working. So
Yeah.
you go, "Oh, I don't believe in the law of attraction." It doesn't matter, because
Right.
it's still working, and it will manifest itself in your behavior, in your actions. And and I think that's why that whole saying that believe people's actions over their words, because their actions can't hide the truth, of
Hmm.
what's going on in their life. They might lie to themselves, but their actions will show where they're truly at.
Mm. Yeah, totally. And I truly think that science is starting to show us this through the, like, if you get into reading some of these people that talk about the quantum nature of our reality, and that um like there is an electromagnetic pull to the body. So again, when we were talking, like, your energy is bigger than just your physical self. Well, when we start to look at that, what does that mean? Okay, well, if everything has a frequency, essentially my system has its own energy signature. And so like attracts like, or repulses certain things too. Like that is part of where I think you can believe in it. You don't have to believe in it. When I first started learning about the law of attraction, I thought it was like the times when I sat down and wrote out my goals. Oh, I'm practicing law of attraction. And meanwhile, I'm learning about some of the core philosophy in chiropractic and natural healing that talks about these energy bodies and about the electromagnetic pull in the system, in the nervous system. And man, then all of a sudden it just like dawned on me. I'm like, oh, this is just by the nature of us having a body with energy coursing through it. We are putting out a frequency. We are, we're doing this, whether we're conscious of where we're tuning that or not. And so that's, again, why I feel that's the whole reason I wrote the book, because that was what I woke up to, is realizing that, doggone it, whether I know it or not, now that I do have an inkling that I have this power, I better use it for good. And that's where the truth part comes in, is like, I'm not asking you to take on my truth. You can't. You have your own truth, right? But if I know that my truth feels the most like excited about, for me, it's the stuff that we're talking about today, then I better serve that to the world. That's what I'm here to do. And so my law of attraction is the most lit up, because my spirit, my soul is the most lit up when I'm talking about these things, or when I'm working on patients and helping them to, heal and do things from, again, this perspective of mind, body, spirit. For me, that is like where, if I didn't do that, I'm sure my law of attraction would be tuned down. My frequency wouldn't be as excited and as, on purpose with these things. Cause I think we all have those things in our life that light us up. And that's where we're really healthy and whole, and probably closest to being, what we're here to do and what we're meant to be in this world. So I think it's really important, personally.
I love how you just worded all that, because it just made me think about myself and how, when I accepted my truth and who I am, that's when the world opened up to me. Until then, it didn't, and it was my own doing, because I wouldn't accept my own truth and be who I was. And so that, what you just said, really hit home to me.
Same. Yeah. Thanks.
One of the things I tell people is this, who think that they can't do this. I go, look, because they'll say, well, I had this happen to me and I had this happen to me and I'm going through this, I'm going through that. I go, look, I don't care who you are in this world. We all have things that we have to deal with. I go, I don't even care if you're Tony frickin' Robbins. I go, I guarantee you, Tony Robbins does not wake up every day, and he has everything, but he does not wake up every day going, life is great. I guarantee you he has those days where he's in the bathtub and there's poop in there. I guarantee. I go,
right.
it's not that they don't have conflict or they don't have, struggles. It's that how they handle those things. Like what turned it around for you is how you handled that day. Like, you can have a bad day, but you don't go, well, I had a bad day, so that means I'm gonna have a bad week, which means I'm gonna have a bad month, blah blah blah, and a bad life, that sort of thing. You don't let that go on. You take care of it.
Totally. And that's the game, right? If you can almost look at all of this as like, it's a game. Like, how fast can you get yourself back to the state that you want to experience in your life? That's where your power is. That's where you're going to create what you want, and these areas that don't feel that way, those are your biggest teaching experiences. My husband would say I'm terrible at the law of attraction, because I'll like, razz him for certain things that over and over. I'm clearly not learning the lesson, but it's like, I can't stop, but I know that's me. It's not him. It's me. He just happens to be the perfect person to pull this part out of me that I'm still figuring out how to like deal with internally, because everything outside of you is a reflection of you. And if that, at first, when you hear that, like, it doesn't make sense. But again, when you start to think of it like you are a frequency and what you're calling in is a match for that frequency, then, there is no random, oh, that's so random. No, it's perfect. It's ordered. And
Right.
if you want to shift it, you got to shift yourself. A friend of mine, Dr. Stu Bittman, we were doing a retreat together, and he had said some sort of story where this master, I don't know if he was a yogi or a I'll just say he was a yogi. And his student asked him, how do you seem like so calm and like nothing phases you? And the teacher responded back and said, you just can't see it because I can snap myself back so fast that I seem like I'm a pond with no ripples. But underneath the pond is where things are still, they're still experiencing that contrast. It's just that your state is unwavering because you're so good at getting yourself back into like love or peace or joy or these higher states that you really do want to embody. And I remind myself that right now because I can get triggered by lots of things in our world right now, which make me feel like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. And then I'm like, that is just what, probably what it's meant to do to you is try and pull you from the state. And so where do we want our power to be is back in these states where we really do have power, because there's so much more energy in the higher states. Like when you are in the best feeling state that you can embody, little things can happen that don't bother you then, or big things can happen and they really don't even bother you that much because you're in a different place. You can react to it differently or respond to it differently. So I try and remember that when I'm getting pulled off my center. It's like, nope, going back to where, I need to be.
Well,
and there's tools that'll help me do that. So I'm sure for everyone, those are different tools.
that makes you stronger, because if you know what happens is you start off here, okay, and you can handle little things that come into your life and go, oh, I got this, I can handle this. But if you never experience any bigger, tragedies or experiences that are or that can rock you, you never get to grow and come up to here. So each time that happens to us, as much as we hate for it to happen to us, it's really a good thing. It gives us and I, especially after you just said that, I go, that's when we should be happy and go, oh, this is an experience. This is a time for us to grow, and not just go, oh, woe is me.
So true. Yeah. And think about, I have a 6-year-old and he's going into kindergarten, and like the things he cries about, it's just like ridiculous. But it's also like where we're navigating that, like think about what you cried about when and I'm not saying don't cry. I'm just saying like what you were, it's perfect. You have to get tested. We're all going to have these other experiences of shame and guilt and anger and grief and human emotions. And then what does it do? It cracks us open. We figure out more about life. We relate to other people who are going through various things that we couldn't relate to before. So I think it makes us more powerful instead of breaking us if we can learn how to like, I can feel that grief and I can still feel joy,
Well, I
Yeah.
imagine, I imagine, especially when COVID hit, because you have several practices. So you don't just have your core practice where you're at, but you have branches of that, right? So
Correct. Yep.
you can only imagine when COVID hit and everything got shut down. That must have been quite a challenge for you to, like you said, to be able to continue to pay your staff and things of that nature. And so you could have very easily just said, "Ugh, see what happens. I do my best to make things work, and then the world just is against me, and and this is what happens." But that wasn't the case. And again, it all comes down to who you are as a person, as to how you're going to handle these challenges when they come about, because we all have them. And I think
Mhm.
people think they're unique and that no one has challenges like they do. And I go, not only do people have challenges like you, there are people out there who have worse challenges than you that are
Right.
much more difficult.
Right. No, so true. I'll share the story with you. So I have gone to Haiti several times. And this is probably like the most mind blowing contrast story that I've experienced. And so there was a man, his name was Eddie, that helped us on these trips as interpreting and just helping us navigate when we'd go in. And Eddie was like in a good mood. He was probably in his 40s, I would guess. And he had been in Port-au-Prince for the earthquake. And so, anyways, we're back out of Haiti in the Dominican Republic at a nice hotel that had like all sorts of food. This is like the second part of the trip. And Eddie was with us because he had the ability to cross the border at that time. And we're sitting there with so much food around us. And he starts telling the story about his son and him, and that when they would get enough food to eat for one day, he would give the extra to his son and tell him to go out and find a child that wasn't going to eat that day and give him like the kid the food. And it just like blew my mind. I'm like sitting here thinking, you have yourself and a child and you have enough food for basically a day, and you're not going to hold on to that food for your kid for the next day. You're going to go give it to someone that's a stranger on the street. And I just was like, it blew my mind. And it just made me realize, kind of like what you were talking earlier when you said, we have no idea how fortunate we are here in the United States. Like, wow, that was just a radical lesson in what is abundance and how you can operate where you trust that things are going to work out. It was just wild to hear that story.
That reminds me of a story Jack Canfield told, because when you just said that, I was like, whether that guy realized it or not, he's practicing the law of abundance. Like, he believes there's abundance. He doesn't come from a place of scarcity. I know people who have freezer full of food and closets full of food, and they still think, they're still worried about scarcity. And they don't get it, that things are always going to be scarce as long as that's where your mindset is. And yet here's a man who has enough food for him and his son for a day, and yet he lives in a world of abundance because that's how he thinks, and he gives the food away to other people. And every day he's able to find food for him and his son. And Jack Canfield said one time, when he was first starting this, the law of attraction, and trying to understand it, he said, he kept thinking, oh, the world is full of abundance, I have plenty of money, blah blah blah. And then he goes, then he walked up to a store, and there was a homeless person, and he asked for some money. He's like, I only had $15 in my wallet. And he goes, I'm not giving you $15, I don't have $15 to give. And then he realized right then, I'm not practicing the law of abundance, because if I did, I'd just give him the money and I will get more. And so at that moment, he gave him everything he had, and left the store. And he said that day, and I don't remember the story completely, so I don't want to tell something that didn't happen. But I think it was that day he received this large sum of money that came into his being, because he started practicing the law of abundance. Now, I know this is going to sound weird to people out there who don't understand the law of attraction, don't believe in the law of attraction, only believe in the physical. All I can tell you is, like, you are a living example of it. I'm a living example. There's so many people out there. And one of the things there's two things I want to make a point about. I was talking to Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, who's the best-selling author. He wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice and What Makes the Great Great, and several other books. He's just a great man. He goes, one of the problems that we fall into is that we compare ourselves to everyone else. So we don't think we're successful unless we're Tony Robbins. Like, that's not true. And we look at the things that we're able to achieve and the things we have achieved, and where we started from, and where we came from, and where we're at now. You can see success everywhere if you'll just look at it through reality, and then through your eyes, and see that you don't have to be Tony Robbins until you're considered a success. And I think we fall short there. And I think the second thing I wanted to say was, too often you've made this point over and over again, is that we allow other people to determine who we are and what we are. And I said, whenever you start making change, you go, I'm going to do better at let's say I make a promise, I'm not going to curse anymore. I'm going to do my best not to curse anymore. And then something happens, I drop a bowling ball on my foot, and I say the F word or something. Someone will go, see, you haven't changed. And I go, change doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to perfect it overnight. The fact that I only said one F word instead of 1,000, that shows I changed, So, and so we need to make sure that we understand that we need to accept change at our pace, and not what other people want to put on us and tell us that, oh, you're not doing this just because we don't live up to their standard.
Yeah, so true. I agree. And when you had said, like, oh, people think this is airy fairy or woo woo, I think that's a muscle you have to flex too. Just like a basketball player shoots free throws and they can make, almost 100% of them. Someone who gets good at navigating this energy concept, or watching their sixth sense or their intuition or whatever you want to call it, doesn't happen overnight. Usually you start to learn, like, I'm going to listen to this voice that's nudging me, or these signs that keep showing up, or whatever. And I'm going to get better at just giving myself the opportunity to even look at them, whether or not you make the decision to, go with what they feel like they're telling you or not. I think that's important to know too, because I think you can easily say, well, that works for them, but it couldn't work for me because I haven't gotten any signs. Yes, you have. You just probably haven't been paying attention to them.
Right. With this awakening that you see and that I see as well, with people becoming more awakened to the law of attraction, to this to this whole concept and everything, are you seeing a shift where more and more people are looking towards holistic health or chiropractic care instead of going right to the conventional doctor who wants to prescribe you a pill or surgery? Do you see more and more of that coming across?
I mean, I definitely see that. That's also where my head is at, probably. So, of course, just like the blue car and the purple car, I see more of it. But I do feel that. I think, again, we can't compartmentalize ourselves so much anymore. And I think people don't want to always have pills. I think they're starting to realize maybe my organs were there for a reason. I don't want to just have them cut out. That doesn't mean that it's all bad. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But even like what we're seeing in our country right now, and you said I can go anywhere I want in this interview. Like, I don't believe that our bodies should be mandated what we do to them. So I 100% am against anything that doesn't resemble something that would be, you make the best choices for your body, and I'll do the same. So, and what do you see? You see protests popping up and things like that. So I do think the more that there's a push from the government or big pharma or whatever you want to call it, I think more people are stepping off that train and saying, wait, what's happening here? Why is this? If this is as good as it says it is, why are we doing this? I think there's a lot of things that don't smell right. And I think, again, if we look at it from more of an energy perspective, it's like, it's waking us up that there's other choices out there, that there's people that aren't living in fear over their bodies all the time. What do they do? What do they do differently? They work out, they eat better, they get adjusted, they do mind, body, spirit practices. And that doesn't mean they're immune to everything. It just is interesting, like you said, to like, let me see the other side of the equation for once. What else is happening?
Right. Well, as
Yeah.
someone who sees both sides, you just
Mhm.
opened up the door to let me play devil's advocate. So,
Please do.
so this will be fun. I haven't had a chance to do this in a while. All right, so I understand where those people are coming from, and I don't want to, and I won't say I don't disagree with them or that I disagree with them. I do believe though, and there's this is where I can go back and forth from one side to the other and argue both sides. It's like I understand why people don't want things mandated. I do believe, however, that our individual freedoms stop when they start to affect the population as a whole. I don't believe that we have the right. I don't believe if I have leprosy, I have the right to go around and go, "Hi, I'm Kurt. Nice to meet you." I don't believe I have the right to do that just because
Sure.
I don't want to be quarantined or something. And I know that's an exaggeration, so I
Mm-hmm.
don't want people getting upset about that. On the other hand, I also see why people are upset about, the first thing we're going to do is vaccinate everybody instead of talking about the things like you do need to exercise, you do need to eat right, you do need to get, out in the sun. Why
Yeah.
why have we not pushed that? Why have we gone straight to a vaccine instead of the things that not only will help us to not get COVID or overcome COVID, but everything else, to where
Mm-hmm.
we don't have diabetes or high blood pressure and all these other things. Why are we not
Right.
being told that information and that being first? Because I'm always about, that's why I love chiropractors, that's why I love acupuncturists, and because I go, whenever I have something done, if I have a problem in my body, I go from the least invasive
Mm-hmm.
into the, if everything else doesn't work, then I'll go to the surgeon if I have to. But
Sure.
I've never had to, because I find that I can always get this stuff fixed, because it's usually not as bad as if you just go to the surgeon, he's automatically going to go, oh, well, I have to operate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way you
Mm-hmm.
can heal this. And for them, it is, so, and so I see this
Right.
being very much the same way. Why go into mandating a vaccine when you haven't tried other options first.
Mhm.
So
No, I'm with you. I think you bring up great points, and you do it in a way that I think also honors that there are people across the spectrum that feel differently. And I think that's the part that's so hard for me is I don't know what's best for you. Only you know what's best for you. I also I don't believe in the germ theory the same way that I think they want us to believe in it. Again, it's more like does the fish die in the tank because the fish is diseased, or does the tank not clean, no, and then the fish dies. So again, bringing right back to your point of like, why aren't we talking about health practices that could really help? And instead, we went straight to masks that are questionably effective. And then we went to this vaccine that's emergency use and is also questionably safe, depending on who you listen to.
right.
So of course, I think if I, again, don't try and go too far down the rabbit hole of what I choose for myself and instead just like across the board, I think people can agree there should be choice. Most of us don't want to be forced. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Force is never the thing you choose. So for me, I wish that energetically could feel better where, maybe you and I choose different things, but we can respect the fact that there should be choice. So I agree that like just because you choose one thing doesn't mean you should be endangering me. However, I also don't know that I feel that there's full transparency about what is the risk truly that we know there is. And so I guess that's for me again where I do think that there's a lack of trust across the board right now. And because of that, we're seeing people wanting to go to places where they trust someone. So like, our office has stayed pretty busy because I mean, we have face-to-face relationships. Like you can ask me a question. We might be on totally different sides of the equation, but we know each other and we can respect each other. And that I trust, even if we don't agree, I trust you. Like we can have a dialogue versus like just going and turning the TV on or, Facebook, whatever they're promoting for the day. I don't know if I trust that anymore. So now I need to go to the places where I can have a conversation.
Yeah, I'd say don't trust Facebook ever.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, but yeah. Yeah.
And I agree. And that's the thing is like I when people, and this is why I don't like Facebook, because when people like you and I, we can sit here, we can talk to each other and be
Mm-hmm.
rational. I can respect, like I said, I may or may not agree with your position, but regardless,
Mm-hmm.
I respect what you're saying because I know that you've given this a lot of thought. You're an intelligent woman who obviously knows more about medicine than I do, and you've come to this conclusion. And I go, I have to respect that. I don't have to agree with it, but I do
Mm-hmm.
respect you, and I respect you for giving it a great deal of thought. For me, I look at it like I was a Boy Scout, so they always, our motto was be prepared. So I'm always thinking about, look, I don't personally have any health issues. I don't worry about getting
Mm-hmm.
COVID, and I knock on wood. Because I know healthy people who've gotten it and died. And I even had a guest on, who him and his brother, he said, are almost identical, and his brother got it, barely had any symptoms. He got it,
Mm-hmm.
was in a coma for 30 days and in the hospital for 6 months or three months. I can't remember. Anyway, he went through a terrible, terrible time with it. Lost the tip of his finger, which if it wasn't for leeches, he would have lost his toes and his fingers. And I was like, holy crap. Like,
That's wild.
so this stuff is real. It's real, but it affects people differently. Now,
Mm-hmm.
with that being said, if I get the vaccine and you don't get the vaccine, why am I worried? If the vaccine works, I shouldn't be worried whether you get it or not. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
bad if something happens to you, but personally, it shouldn't affect me if the vaccine works the way they say it does. But the same thing, like when I wear a mask, I know the mask that I wear. I have I don't know where I have it. I have one that I had mask made up called it has says the Powers Project. Loved it. So I wear
Yeah.
it all the time because it's promotion. But I really wear it because if it brings other people comfort, then it's no sweat off my back to have a mask on for the time that I'm going to spend in the store. But I want to say, but if you're really concerned, you shouldn't be worried about whether I have a mask. You should be worried about, are you eating right? Are you exercising? Are you doing the things you need to do to stay healthy? And
Mm.
they don't like when you throw it back, the responsibility back on their shoulders. And so
Mhm.
both on both sides, we need to be responsible for our actions, and we need to be thoughtful, and we need to go, hey, as in everything else that we've talked about so far, we are responsible for
Mm.
ourselves.
You hit the nail on the head. That's what I believe too. Again, it comes down to choices, right? Choices of
Right.
where we're at internally and what choices we're going to make, and not all of us are going to have the same truth in that, and that is okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Hmm.
And if I have any issue with anyone, it's the ones who don't want to wear a mask. It's the ones who don't want to get vaccinated, and they're out of shape. They're overweight. I'm like, you are the people that are going to get harmed the most from this, and you're just flippant about it. And see, that to me, that bothers me because they haven't put any thought into it. They're just being like,
But maybe they have. You
maybe
can't for sure know that.
I don't, but it seems like they're acting like petulant children at times, like, no, I'm not going to wear that, that sort of thing. And you're right. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like they're just standing up because they're so like they they're so adamant about their rights that
Mhm.
trumps everything else. And while I'm all about freedom of choice and freedom of rights, I go, look, you're not going to have any freedom of rights if you're dead, and so just
But
make.
it's their choice, right? Like that's the beauty in it. It is their choice.
And right now, because we don't have universal health care, it doesn't affect us as much as it would if we had universal health care. Because that's one of the things. Like, I believe everyone should have access to health care, but I also believe you need to be responsible. If we're going to
Mm.
give universal health care, when a doctor tells you you need to lose 30 pounds, you need to quit smoking, you need to quit drinking, you need to do those things. If you're not willing to take responsibility and make those choices to make yourself healthier, why should the taxpayers do it for you? I
Yeah.
just,
Well, and I think so much of what you said too is like there are so many things that would be helpful in this whole discussion that we don't see in the main avenues of communication like mainstream media and Facebook and whatnot. So it just like is priming the pot for people to be angry at each other when, like you said, sunlight and good nutrition and less stress and all these things would probably change lots of things about what we're experiencing, not just the COVID symptoms, but also like, all the other side effects that we've all experienced through this whole thing. So yeah, again, I think we're going through a major contraction and there's probably something we have no idea on the other side of what the world will be like once we're out of this craziness, because we'll all have learned so many different things. I think most people have had so many ahas already. And I know we all thought it was going to be like a 2 week or 4 week deal when it first started. And here we are 18 months later, you know, all the awareness that we've created just in that time of just, what's happening in the world and what's happening internally in me. And what about my own small microcosm of my world? And how did that feel over the last 18 months? It's just shed so much light on so much.
and that brings up another point. Two things. One is, imagine what would have happened if people in power would have said, "Hey, look, you want to fight COVID? These are the best things to start with: your diet, exercise,
Mm,
get out in the sun, do those things." Because not only would it have affected the amount of people who would have gotten COVID or have suffered from it, it would have changed them and their health forever if they
mm,
started implementing these things and they became a way of life. Now all of a sudden we have less people who are diabetic, or less people who have high blood
right.
pressure or heart disease and things like that. That's a change that we could say COVID's a
Hmm.
bad thing, but because of this bad thing, a good thing came out of it. And
Hmm.
that's the best that we could hope for. So yeah, I just wish we could look at things in that way, and see that if some, as that old saying that, take lemons and make it into lemonade, we could.
Yeah, good. I like it. And maybe we still can do that.
Maybe we can. And I think again, shows like this, and having guests like you on, and again, because you do come from a different side. I'm sure that the side that you take, a lot of people would be surprised, but it doesn't surprise me, because again, I don't look at those people as being, oh, they're less than, they're not smart enough. And I see that on Facebook. That's why I hate Facebook. I do. I hate it. because everyone is just so nasty to one another because they
Mhm.
can be. If they were standing in front of each other, I don't
Right.
know. I mean, anymore, it's like you look at YouTube and you can see videos of people in Walmart and other places, and they're all screaming at each other. It's like, this is so silly, honestly.
Hmm.
Where are these?
Well, it goes back to tone, right? Frequency. Your law of attraction. So if you want to get angry, like it doesn't ruffle my feathers hardly at all if someone doesn't agree with me. I'm so used to like, again, this isn't like COVID isn't a new experience for us to have some of these out there beliefs about what we should do with our body or not, because we are in holistic health. So we do things somewhat differently. So we're so used to it on some level that I'm used to like, oh, most people don't agree with me on some of this. I'm okay with that. It's just, again, this respect issue, but I think it goes back to like, I also believe that law of attraction takes care of that. Like if I have myself in a centered place, I'm not really worried about what you're doing or not doing, because I really don't believe that has a lot of power over me.
And that's very true. And that was the other point I wanted to make. So, do you think that because it seems to me that people are too wrapped up in things that don't really affect, like they're so busy in everyone else's life and telling them how to live and what to do that don't, that way they don't have to worry about themselves. And I want to go, just focus
Yeah.
on you. I mean, is that what you see as well?
Totally. And the only reason I think we've had to on this side of the equation now that, like, for instance, I was with a bunch of nurses today that don't want the vaccine. And you know, again, as long as it wasn't like their job, like meaning like they're going to lose their job potentially because of this. And so, now they may need to voice that they have a different opinion than what's being pushed on them, right? Otherwise, I think don't push it on me and I won't push it on you. Again, I just feel like we're in this weird time, but maybe it's because that's what needs to happen is that, worry about yourself, that your world is an inside out world. Like my world is an inside out world. I can't make decisions for you. You can't make decisions for me. Like I have a mother who I wish I could heal. There's so many things that are tragic about what's happened to her. I wish I could go in and scoop her up and save her, but that has not worked in the 6 years that I have wanted to do that for her. I also don't believe that I'm going to kill my mom by not taking a jab, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
So, and I know she doesn't believe that. Now, if she really felt strongly, like, don't come around me, Lona, because you're not going to have it, then I would respect her wishes because that would be her decision. And I wouldn't take that personally because I also have my decision. So again, it just goes back to like, can we disagree and still have like compassion for each other?
Yeah, that's the thing we're lacking is compassion.
Mm-hmm.
We truly do lack compassion. And I've said this for many times, we lack grace as well. We
Mm.
along the line, grace fell out of fashion, and it's unfortunate. I
Let's
will
make
say,
it cool again.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Mm-hmm.
And it's because it's easy. I mean, I've fallen into the trap of going to the store in sweatpants. I'm going, and I had my friend. Thank goodness he made fun of me. He's like, you look like you're like some homeless person in your sweatpants. I go because I didn't want to go home from the gym and and then and change and then come to the store. I was like, I'll just go to the store. But he's right. I mean, I should care enough about how I look for me, not about anyone else, but to go, this is how I carry myself. And I don't care how everyone else dresses or acts. It's how what makes me feel good. And that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this about companies though. It's funny because you have people on the right and they're always pro business. And this is the one time they're not pro business, which is hypocritical. And of course, people on the left are never pro business. And this is the one time they're pro business. And I go, if you have a business and you mandate that your employees have to get vaccinated, they're just doing it to cover their butts. That's all they're doing. Because in living in a country that's as litigious as ours, I
Mm-hmm.
assure you that if if the hospitals didn't say you must be vaccinated and someone got COVID while in that hospital, they would sue the heck out of that hospital. And so they're really in a tough spot themselves, because I'm sure many of them don't want to mandate this. They don't want to lose
I
their
don't
nurses.
know.
They already have a nursing shortage, so
I know.
they certainly don't want to lose them. But I kind of feel like they're between a rock and a hard place, and it's
Mhm.
not something I would want to have to make a decision about for sure.
No, I said this so many times. I'm like, you can't make everyone happy right now. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So
It
again,
off
you might as well do what feels right to you.
right.
Yeah.
Because half the country's going to be pissed at you, no matter what the
Mm-hmm.
decision is.
Mm-hmm. Which
Um,
is why, again, like I think making it a red and blue thing is
that's
is what's made this so frustrating. Yeah. And I don't think it needs to be that way. And I think that's where we have to somehow like again, like take a step back and just like, okay, what's human? You're like, we're all brothers and sisters here, like, and the compassion and the, like you said, the grace part of this, like that's what's going to get us through this.
right. And we need to start thinking about each other instead of the red or blue, because we do
Mm-hmm.
look at our politics the way we look at our sports teams, and we make excuses like,
Mm-hmm.
you take Patriot fans for instance, when there was that deflate gate with um
Yeah. Brady.
Brady, yeah, with Tom Brady, and you couldn't get a Patriot fan to say one bad word about any of it, and because
Mm-hmm.
that's their man, that's their team, they're not going to. I go, but you can't do that with politics. You've got to call out the BS on both sides, because
Mm-hmm.
both sides are playing us and both sides are taking advantage of us. Both sides are throwing us the bone after they've eaten the steak and said, "Here you go," and we're thankful for it. I go, until we
Yes.
both we all wake up and go, hey, both of these sides are screwing us over.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be in this situation, unfortunately. So
I'm with you.
anyway, I wanted to ask you about this because it's a book that I love. Have you ever heard of The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton?
Bruce Lipton.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I was when I was listening to you, it made me think of that book. I was like, this is so much like what's in his
Mm-hmm.
book, and it's so nice to see you and others, and Dr. Lipton himself, and people starting to realize that what you believe is your reality, and this
Mm-hmm.
is why I say doctors have such an important role, and they have to be so careful on how they talk to their patients. You can't
Mm-hmm.
tell, I would say you shouldn't tell a patient, oh, you're never going to walk again, because
Mm-hmm.
eh, most people are going to believe them because they're the experts and they're going to believe them, and so there may be cases where they could walk, but they won't because they believe the doctor told them they would never walk again, or that they're going to die in 6 months or whatever. I like, I don't, I think you have to be more responsible when you have that sort of power, and realize you have that sort of power when you're talking to your patients and putting that kind of stuff out there, because they will believe it, and whatever they believe. We've seen, I know you've seen it because I've seen it. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
who get sick every year, at least twice a year, because they tell themselves, "Oh, I get sick twice a year." That's what they say. I get sick twice a year. Then and here and here, and sure enough,
Yeah.
like clockwork, that's when they get sick. So
Mm. Our words are powerful, that's for sure.
they are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Whether they're uttered out loud or just in our head, they're so powerful. Yeah, I agree. I read something that was talking about like a teacher should never teach a child unless they can honor that there's a genius within them. And I think the same is true for a doctor. A doctor shouldn't be the doctor to a patient unless they see that there's hope and healing potential. Yeah.
yeah, I like that. I agree.
Mhm.
I agree with you. That's very good. If so, out of everything that we've talked about today, if there's one message, if you're someone like me that goes, okay, all that sounded good, but I'm not going to remember any of it. If you
Yeah.
one thing you say that you go, Kurt, if you don't remember anything else I said, I
Mhm.
want you to remember this. What would that lesson be? What would it be that you'd want me to remember?
Yeah. That your state matters internally to your whole world. And if you can boil things down, they're usually either a decision between a loving state or a state full of fear. Choose to go in the direction of the love. That would be my tidbit for you, and your life will change for the better.
I completely agree with you. I'm glad that you gave me the opportunity to play devil's advocate, though, because I haven't been able to do that for a while. So.
Yeah, I have no problem. I feel like this is part of what's on my heart now, is to just have conversations.
Right.
I think we need to.
And I think it's important to have conversations with people who have difference of opinion, because again, that's why I said one of the it's not a fear. One of the things that I'm a little concerned about is that I have so many people on who I agree with, that people are the only people who are going to listen are people who agree with us. And I don't, as much as I want that, I want other people to hear us. I want them to think about what we're saying, and then, again, make their own choices as to what they believe. And I tell people, don't, I'll tell them, even this one, I'll say, don't believe Lona. Don't believe me. Just listen to what we had to say, and then do the research yourself and come to your own conclusions. But at least now you have more information before you make a decision. The more information you have, the better the decision's going to be, as far as I'm concerned. So
yeah, I agree.
So, well,
thanks for having me.
It was such a pleasure. It really was. I really enjoyed this. And I know I say this way too often. Everybody's like, you always tell your guests that you'd have them back on. But I enjoy my guests so much, but I would love to have you back on and talk about something else again, So if there's ever a topic you want to talk about, you're someone who I know that you're able to, and not many people are able to do this anymore. You're able to have a discussion with somebody who might have a difference of opinion and not take it personally. Everyone takes it personally nowadays. Even lawyers. I have friends who are lawyers, and I have one friend who's a lawyer. He's good at it, but there's others who, like, if you have a difference of opinion, they're like, oh, like they don't want to hear it. And I'm going, what happened to the spirit of debate? Where did that
right.
go? It was really a pleasure to have you on the show and to be able to have such a great conversation with you today.
Thanks, Kurt. I would love to come back. I'll have to think about what that next topic would be, but
yeah, you let me know, and we'll have you back on, definitely, because it just was a lot of fun. So, and
thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, listen, thank you again for being on the show. And folks, thank you for joining us. And go check out Dr. Cook's book, Reclamation, The Evolution of a Hot Mess. Especially if you're a hot mess, like we're all a hot mess, go check it out, because I'm sure there's something in there that will apply to you. I'm sure there's a lot that will apply to everyone. So go check out her book. And until next time, as usual, take care, be safe. And Dr. Lana, don't get upset with me. Wear your mask, at least for now. just out of courtesy. So, all right. Take care. Bye.